In today's lesson, we're going to cover a super common chord sequence, the minor 2-5-1. This is found in tons of standards and plenty of pop and R&B tunes. First up, we'll cover the theory behind minor 2-5-1s and then jump into two different approaches for soloing over this chord sequence. My name is Jack Ruch. Welcome to my channel. Let's get into it. So to start out, let's talk about 2-5-1s. These numbers stand for chords built off of scale degrees. So if I play a 2-5-1 in C major, I'm going to be working with the C major scale. And for my 2 chord, I'm going to go to the second note of that scale, which is D, and play a D minor chord. That's the chord built off of the second note of a C major scale. Then for the 5 chord, I'm going to go to G, which is the 5th note of the C major scale, and I'm going to play a G7 chord. That's my 5 chord. And then finally, for the 1 of the 2-5-1, I'm going to go back to C major, which is the root chord in the key. Now, in the case of a minor 2-5-1, this is a chord sequence that resolves to a minor 1 chord. And the 2 chord is going to be a minor 7 flat 5 chord. The 5 chord, again, is going to be a dominant 7 chord, and then this time the 1 chord is going to be a minor 1 chord. Now for today's examples, I'm going to be in the key of D minor. So our 2 chord is an E minor 7 flat 5, followed by an A7 for our 5 chord, and then a D minor 7 for our 1 chord. So a good example of a minor 2-5-1 used in a song is in the tune Blue Bossa, where it uses a minor 2-5-1 to get back to the top of the chord progression. You can also use this type of device in your own compositions, right? Say I'm playing a song in the key of F, and I want to go from F to D minor in my song, right? Well, if I want a more interesting and elaborate way of getting to that D minor, I can plug a minor 2-5-1 in that spot to resolve to that chord, like a... Right, so this is a really useful tool to use for understanding songs and composing progressions of your own. So now that we understand a little bit of the basic theory behind minor 2-5-1s, let's jump into a couple of different approaches we can use for soloing over these changes. So my first approach for soloing over any chord changes is to first identify what are the notes that make up the chords, the chord tones, right? So if we look at this E minor 7 flat 5 chord, we've got the root E, right? That's the root of the chord. And then because it's a minor chord, we've got a minor 3rd, the note G. And then the flat 5, which is right in the name, minor 7 flat 5. So that's the note B flat. So instead of a regular B, which would be the perfect 5th of an E chord, we've got a flat 5. And then because it's a minor 7 chord, we've got a flat 7, the note D. So E, G, B flat, D, or the root, minor 3rd, flat 5, and flat 7. Now it's just a matter of finding those notes all over the fretboard, and we can break it down just in this one spot. There's the root, minor 3rd, flat 5th, flat 7. Then we have the root, minor 3rd, flat 5, flat 7. And we can keep going down, right? There's our minor 3rd, flat 5, flat 7. So that's what this arpeggio looks like in this position, right? Now, if you're wondering, what do I play over this chord? If you see this chord in a song, that's really a foolproof way to tackle playing over something like that. And it's particularly great if you're not used to playing over chords like this. It's really the most direct approach to playing the key notes that are gonna give you the most melodic impact. So if I see that chord and I'm wondering what to play, I can just play notes right out of the chord. So now if we continue to the 5 chord of our 2-5-1, we've got this chord A7. And again, we can play the chord tones that make up that chord, which is the root A, the major third C sharp, the perfect fifth E, and the flat 7 G. And again, we can play all those notes in this position, in the same position. Right? And then that leads us to our 1 chord, the D minor 7. And again, we can play all these chord tones right in this spot. There's our root, D, our minor third, F, our perfect fifth, A, and our flat 7, C. And we can continue that up. Right, so now that we've sort of looked at all these chord tones to these chords, we can play through them in this one spot and see how these chords connect together in a linear single note kind of way, right? So then A7, and then D minor 7. So a great way to get started making lines with these arpeggio shapes is to do this little voice leading exercise. For this, we're going to play eighth notes and we're going to seamlessly transition from one arpeggio to the next in time with the tune. So it's really common with a 2-5-1 to play a split bar for the 2 chord and the 5 chord, and then a full measure of the 1 chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So with 2 beats, you get 4 eighth notes, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So what we can do is play 4 notes of our E minor 7 arpeggio, and then wherever we land, use that as the starting point for 4 notes of our A7 arpeggio, and then resolve to a chord tone of D minor. So for example, if I start on E and just play up my E minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1, right? So I counted out the beats there. These are eighth notes, right? So I'm playing 4 notes of E minor 7. There's root, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. And then from here, I'm just transitioning to the closest note I have of my A7, which is this third. So third, fifth, flat 7, root, and then landing on a chord tone of my D minor 7 chord. So. Right, so that's a great way to break these arpeggios apart and start viewing them as melodic fragments that you can use to make lines. And you can be really systematic about this. You can work through the arpeggio starting on each different note in the shape, and that's gonna force you to transition in a different spot. So if I start on the lowest note of this E minor 7 flat 5 shape, I have the minor third up to the flat 5, up to the flat 7 to the root, and then this is gonna have me transition to the A7 right here. So flat 7, root, third, fifth, and then land on a chord tone of D minor. So, and if I keep moving that up 1 note through the arpeggio and start in a different spot, instead of the flat 3, now I can start on the flat 5 and I get a different transition spot. So. Right, and I can just keep working up through it. Right, so you can be really systematic about practicing through this voice leading exercise, and it's a really great way to view these arpeggios as a blueprint for music rather than just shapes. So now I'm going to play along to a little backing track, just a 2-5-1 vamp, and I'll play a few melodic ideas using this arpeggio approach. So I've always considered this chord tone approach to be the most simple and direct way to start navigating over changes, right? Look at the chords you're playing over, identify the notes that make up those chords, and figure out how to play them around the fretboard and then start tying them together in a melodic way. But I recently was watching my favorite YouTube channel, which is Jimmy Bruno's YouTube channel, and he suggested another equally simple and effective way for getting around a minor 2-5-1. Now, if you're not familiar with Jimmy Bruno's channel, definitely go check it out. He's a legendary jazz guitar player and incredibly funny and wise, and shares some great information on there. I'll put the link down in the description, so definitely go check that out. But what Jimmy was talking about was actually more of a scale approach, where over this D minor, minor 2-5-1, he was actually playing out of an F major scale, right? This scale. Right, and the reason this works is that two of the chords in this progression, the E minor 7 flat 5 and the D minor 7, are actually diatonic to the key of F major, right? If we build chords out of all the notes of an F major scale, we end up with this cycle of chords. F major or F major 7, G minor 7, A minor 7, B flat major 7, C dominant 7, D minor 7, E minor 7 flat 5, and then back to F major 7. So right there we see the E minor 7 flat 5 and the D minor 7 are right in there. The only chord that's not is that A7, right? In the key of F you have an A minor 7. So the only note that's different between A minor 7 and A dominant 7 is the third. That C goes up to C sharp. So what Jimmy was talking about was play the F major scale and just change that one note over that one chord. So your F major scale, right there, you would change that C to C sharp, just as you transition over that A7 chord, right? And you can do the same kind of eighth note little exercises with this by playing 4 eighth notes of the F major scale over the E minor 7 flat 5 chord, and then 4 notes of sort of our modified F major scale over the A7 chord, and then resolve to D minor. So if I just play, pick a note and play down the F major scale, I can play 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and, right? So I can just play through the scale and make sure when that I'm falling over that A7 chord, I'm hitting that C sharp note, right? So right, and you can again take sort of a systematic approach and work through the scale, and it's cool because it's a different way of looking at the same thing, really. But the scale gives you a few more notes. You've got 7 notes in the scale as opposed to 4 notes in your arpeggios. So now I'm gonna solo over the track again and use this different approach of playing some similar things, but you'll hear how it takes on a different sound by thinking of it in a different way. So these two approaches are essentially just two ways of looking at the same thing. But I think this is a great way to learn. The more ways you can look at something, the more perspective you get, and the better you start to learn it inside and out. For example, if I just learn one lick over these chord changes, then I'm limited to just that one lick. But if I understand the theory behind it and I can view it from all these different angles, I start to get a really deep understanding of it, and that allows me to play with more freedom and start to discover my own sound. So as always, go check out the Patreon page if you want tabs and backing tracks for this lesson. And until next time, happy practicing and take care.
Thank you.